Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode number 55. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. If you're looking for more information about the podcast, past guests, or want to catch up on previous episodes, or just want to drop me a line, it's all at the website, desertladydiaries.com. And I invite you to follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries and on Twitter at Desert Lady Diary. And thank you, ACD Mama, for taking the time to share your kind words and rate the podcast with a 5-star review on iTunes. I really appreciate that. In this episode, painter Zara Kand talks about following your heart, as well as a memorable camping trip that prompted a move from Los Angeles to Joshua Tree, where a bookstore became a dream come true. My guest on Desert Lady Diaries today is Zara Kand. She is an oil painter and freelance artist of many mediums. She's also co-owner of Space Cowboy Books, a bookstore in Joshua Tree that hosts monthly community events and publishes local works of literature. She's lived in many parts of the world and is happy to have finally made her home here in the high desert. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dawn. Thanks for having me.
What was your first experience with desert?
Well, I'd spent brief periods of time in places like Victorville and things like that when I was a child, but the most memorable time for me was just within the last 7 months. My husband Jean-Paul and I, we actually went on our first date. At the time, we came out here to Joshua Tree. He'd been coming out here since he was a teenager. He'd always loved this place. He was excited to show me Joshua Tree for the first time. And that's when I fell in love with Joshua Tree.
What kind of date was it? So did he have a picnic planned and all that stuff?
We went camping.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
It was over by the dry lake bed.
So you got a real picture of what the desert is like.
We got the desert experience, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At what point, then, did you decide we're going to move to Joshua Tree?
It was the second time that we came out here. We loved coming out here together so much that we decided to make it a regular thing. Mm-hmm. And so the second time that we came out here, it was maybe a year later or something. We were out hiking on some boulders, and we found ourselves in a place that was situated kind of high and overlooking the town. And we noticed how it was so spacious, and all the houses seemed to be kind of spread out. And we thought, gosh, this would be a really nice experience to have. I wonder if we could do it someday. And we thought, oh, well, maybe someday we can dream about it. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I had the impression that property wasn't going to be affordable in this area. I don't know why, because you can tell it's not like a booming economic place, but just the beauty of it. But when I went home, I looked into prices of places out here and was shocked to see how affordable it was. And then I realized that our dream could actually become a reality. And so since that moment, we started planning for that.
How long ago was that?
Well, we've been out here for 3 years now. I guess that was 6 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where did you move from?
We were living in Los Angeles at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. We'd lived there for a time and never felt at home there. We lived in different parts of the country. I'd lived in Europe throughout my childhood, and I never found a place that seemed more like home than Joshua Tree, actually.
Mm. Can you it's usually just a feeling, so I will say, can you put a feeling around, can you name what it was that made you feel at home?
That is a hard thing to pinpoint. It's more of like a spiritual knowing, I suppose, because it wasn't anything about the types of houses that are here that I decided that's what I have to have, or I had never been set on, at some point, I have to live in a desert environment. It was just kind of the combination of all the things of this area. I liked the idea of having a house that had a lot of space around it, not having to hear your neighbors constantly.
Yeah. But you can't get that much in LA. You hear them all the time.
No, you're basically living with your neighbors.
Right, exactly. You could reach through windows and touch them sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So from the moment that you decided to move to the time that you actually got here, what was that span of time like, and what was that process like for you?
It was pretty casual. We wanted to do it right, so we just slowly started looking into places that we could go check out, and we made arrangements with the work that we were doing in LA. We made it so that when we got here, we still had a pretty solid setup.
Mm-hmm. So when you moved here, did you know that you would be opening a bookstore? Was that a decision that you made?
No.
How did that happen?
That was another dream of ours. Mm-hmm. One that just seemed impossible when we were living in Los Angeles, because you couldn't get a storefront that was affordable, at least not us, Right. And so that was a dream that we just kind of kept on the back burner. Within a few months of moving out here, I came across the Sun Alley complex because I got involved right away in the gallery scene, and I met the people of Gallery 62, and at the time they were located at where Robert Warner's leather shop is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, this was about 2.5 years ago. They were part of the Sun Alley complex, which is right next to Art Queen. And I happened to notice that there were some shacks, sheds, whatever you want to call them, that were located behind that property. And then this lady that I met pointed out that they were for rent. And then that's when my antenna went up, and I was like, these are interesting little structures. How much are they? And then when she told me, I was like, wow, wait a minute. And then the wheels started turning. Oh, wow, I think we could turn this into something. It was affordable. So it started off as a more casual project. We were located in the back in one of the smaller sheds, and people actually laughed at us at first when we opened. Like, you're crazy to open up a bookstore in this town, And I think they didn't take us all too seriously, right. Especially because of the setup. We had a very minimal collection at that time.
Right.
We tried our best to fill the space, but a lot of it came from our personal collection. But actually, it grew, and people started noticing us more and more, and started to take us more seriously. We started holding community events. We started having movie nights in the summer where we'd open up with a poetry reading, and then finish the night off with an old vintage film. So we started doing all kinds of fun events like that. And then we got a chance to move into a nicer space, a little closer to the highway, still within Sun Alley complex.
Right.
And so now we have a larger space, and we have, I'm pretty impressed by the collection that we have now.
You've got a lot in that little space. There's a bunch in there.
We've made the most out of the space, and we try to have all the must-have titles. And so...
And it's mostly science fiction, right?
We specialize in sci-fi. I would say a third of the shop is sci-fi, but we have a little bit of everything. I think most people think, it's just a sci-fi bookstore. But actually, we have classic literature, we have field guides, we have a local author section, which we're really proud of because we love helping out the community.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because I have been to a couple of the poetry readings that you collaborate with Troy and Needles, Richard, right, is his name? And there's always conversation about a chap book. And I don't really know what a chap book is. So could you explain that a little bit?
Sure. It's related to a zine. It's got pages that are folded in half and then stapled, and the cover is usually made out of some kind of thicker stock. And it's usually DIY. You can make them yourself. But yeah, we've started a series of those. We've been putting out chap books for all kinds of local authors, and a few that are non-local.
That's cool.
It's been a great way for some people that have never been published before to get their work out there in a pretty casual way.
Right.
But we're actually going into paperback this year.
Wonderful.
We'll have our first paperback out. It'll be an anthology of local authors. Next month, I don't have a date yet, but that's very exciting because we've been working towards that. That's how everything has started, just step by step until it turns into something that matches your ultimate vision.
Right. Well, and that's kind of like just the way it happens here. You start something and you just never know where it's going to take you.
Yes, it's been so surprising. Yeah.
So when you guys came here,
you didn't know anyone.
Nope.
You moved here not knowing anybody. So was the art scene, the gallery, your introduction into getting then to make friends, or how did that all work?
I would say that is how it happened. I met the lovely lady, Janice Comments.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone knows her around here.
Yeah.
I initially met her because she was instructing a drawing class over at the retreat center. I was doing studies at the time, trying to develop my skills, and I was still in that process. Well, we're always in that process as artists, but at the time I was vigorously doing that. So once we moved here, I immediately started looking into what kinds of classes were available. So I started taking this drawing class, and then I met her, and she said, "Oh, you're an artist, you should check out Gallery 62. It's a community gallery." And so I went over there, and everyone was so welcoming. And then a month later, I was showing there.
Wow.
And that was pretty much it. Since then, I've been heavily involved in the arts community.
Yeah. Well, I did some research, as I do. And I came across an article where you were quoted as saying, "When I was 18, I knew I wasn't going to have a regular career." So, can you explain, or can you remember back to when you realized that and had those thoughts, what that was like, and then what your career path has kind of been to today?
Yeah. Sure. Well, ever since I was a little kid, I was always drawn to the visual arts. That was known by my family and anyone that was around me, like, "Oh, that girl is an artist. She's going to be an artist someday." All my teachers in school always were encouraging of that. And then when I graduated high school, when I was 18, I was going through the process of looking through college applications and all that, and I felt this pressure to decide on a career because I hadn't actually decided yet, and I felt like such a loser. Usually midway through high school, I think, people have an idea of where they're going to go to college and what their career is going to be.
Where they think they do.
Yeah, or they're considering different options at least.
Right.
And I still had no clue. I considered, I knew it had to be something creative. I knew that much. So I thought, do I want to be a makeup artist or a graphic artist? And I just had this revelation one day while I had all these papers in front of me for different colleges and things like that, and the different majors that you could apply for and all that. And I just had the realization that I already know what I want to do with my life. I've been doing it already since I was a little girl, and it's what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And I decided, okay, Zara, this is your agreement with yourself. You're going to go for it. You're going to just be an artist. Just keep doing what you do. And yes, they tell you that's an unstable path to choose and all of that, but I'm going to just go for it anyways because that's what my heart has been screaming at me to do.
And good for you for recognizing that at that age. Whereas someone like me knew that at that age, that a regular job was not for me. Mm-hmm. And yet I went ahead and went into the mold and got into that, factory 8 to 5 mentality, working.
Which was not you.
Which was not me, right. So I spent 20 years not being me.
Oh.
Which is a bummer. Yeah. So good for you for recognizing that. And I hope that people hear that and recognize it in themselves, whether they're 18 or 35 or 55, and it's never too late to just say, you know what, I'm getting off this bus and getting on that one.
That's true. It's never too late. Yeah. You have to, I hate to sound cliche, but you do have to listen to your heart, even when everyone around you is telling you that's not smart. Exactly. And maybe it isn't, but why not find that out for yourself?
Right, exactly. What could happen? What could go wrong?
Advice, but if your heart is telling you to do something, you should venture into that.
Right. So did you proceed to a arts college, or how did you start down that path then?
I went to a community college and started taking some art classes. And I had made friends with some artists at that time that were already exhibiting in galleries and whatnot. And I just decided to give it a try. Of course, I wasn't very good back then.
You were just starting.
Yeah, I mean, I was okay at drawing and things like that, but I certainly was not a skillful painter yet. But I didn't let that stop me.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I got accepted into galleries already at that age, just by going and seeking it out. So that's another thing I always tell people, is don't be afraid to ask and to, don't...
Or wait till it's perfect.
Yeah.
To start doing something.
Yeah, because even though my work was kind of crappy at that age, and I'm not very proud of some of the stuff that I exhibited, it was still necessary within the learning process. It got me to where I am today. So I kind of had to make a little bit of a fool of myself.
As we all do. And then there's no risk, no reward. Another cliche. But it's true. I mean, if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't pick up your life and move somewhere, if you don't take chances, you'll never know.
Exactly.
And then you look back and you say, wow, I wish I woulda. And that's no way to live.
Yeah.
So, good for you.
Thank you.
And the mixed media, or the painting, is not only your only artistic pursuit. We recently were in a production together as actors.
That was a first for me.
Right. So, no risk, no reward.
That was a lot of fun. And
It was a lot of fun.
Could have easily been one of those things where I could have talked myself out of it, like, what are you doing, you idiot? You're not an actress.
Mm-hmm.
And I just decided, well, let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so great. It was
wonderful.
It was such a learning experience,
Right.
and working with people such as yourself that are experienced in that art form. It was truly, I'm probably not going to continue to pursue that path, but I can now say that's something I did in my lifetime.
Right.
And
you did it very well. I was very impressed.
Really?
Yes, I thought you were wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
So, and Lawrence was great.
Yes.
Corralling us all women show we did last summer at Bluefish Cove. And it was really wonderful. And it was part of the Stonewall Remembrance Days at Art Queen and Sun Alley.
The actual night of the play. I'm just going to go ahead and call it a play.
Sure.
Because there were props.
Right.
It seemed like a full-on production by the time we got to the actual date. It was a full house, and it just seemed so magical, people's responses to the performance. They were truly moved.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget that.
And speaking of Art Queen and Sun Alley, you have a show coming up. And is it your work is in it and you've curated it? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Okay.
What's it called?
So the name of the show is called Fever Dream. And it all came about right at the beginning of this year. Lawrence, who takes care of the gallery, Lawrence Lane, it's Art Queen Gallery, he was saying that he was interested in having a show that maybe featured a couple out-of-town artists as well as local artists, just to bring some different faces into the community. And he asked me if I'd be interested in doing something with that, because I had curatorial experience. I was director of Gallery 62 in 2017, and he knew that. He knew I had director experience. So I said, okay, who should I invite? And I thought of this one artist who I've been a fan of for 8 years or so. She's known for her stop-motion animation films. Her first feature-length film is called Blood, Tea, and Red String. And I discovered it about 8 years ago because I've been a collector of stop-motion animation and fell in love with it immediately. And I managed to get in touch with her years later, and I always thought of, at some point, I'd love to work with her in some way. So when this came up, I thought, I'm getting Christian Sagowski. I'm going to ask if she would like to do a show in Joshua Tree. She lives in Oregon, so she may or may not want to.
Right.
And then around that time, I met another wonderful artist whose works I hadn't heard of before. Her name's Carol Cameron. She does a lot of really interesting mixed media work. It's very intricate, it's sculptural, but then she weaves little designs into fabric. It's hard to explain, you just have to see it.
Yeah.
So this show has come together as being Christian Sagafsky, Carol Cameron, and myself, and it's from September 1st to October 28th.
And where can people find out more about that? Is there a website for it, or is there some social media site?
It's, if you search Fever Dream Joshua Tree, I've got it listed on all kinds of event sites. Okay. It's listed in Coachella Valley Weekly, it's in Palm Springs Life, it's on Eventful.
I think it's on your website.
It's on my website, right? That's right. Okay.
Which we will put in the show notes so that you can go and see Zara's work. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's really, really exciting. So, coming here to the desert, without really much of an idea other than what you'd seen in your first 2 trips, was there anything that surprised you when you moved here or caught you off guard? What were some of those things?
I would say that the community really was something, it ended up being something that I didn't expect. I thought that we would come out here knowing that we'd be mainly isolated and just kind of live amongst ourselves. I had no idea that I'd be thrust into a family, basically. And it happened very quickly.
Yeah. And especially you said earlier that you just kind of put yourself out there and got involved right away. And if you do that, it will happen.
It happens. But see, living in the city, it's not always like that.
No.
Because it's kind of like that analogy of being a little fish in a huge pond. I had done lots of exhibiting in the city and whatnot, but never established like a firm community, family feeling. Then this place is just so supportive. They're not competing with one another. We all want to bring one another up in the best way we can. So that was a surprise to me, for sure. And I'd say if I have advice for anyone moving anywhere, especially to a more remote area, don't come with any prejudgments about what the people are going to be like. They seem like they're cultureless, or they don't have a lot going on, because there's more than enough to keep up with.
Yes, that comes up pretty often here. People still will run into me if I'm in LA, or they'll send me an email, hey, I saw this, or you're doing this. What else are you doing out there? What's to do out there? Are you serious? You have no idea. Is there anything for someone who maybe is thinking they would want to pursue learning how to paint? Are there any things that you can recommend, resources they can check out, or things like that, if they're thinking, I would like to try that, but I don't think I'd be any good at it?
Taking college classes is helpful, although sometimes they're a little bit limited in their approach as far as what their idea is of what makes an artist skilled. So I think if you can somehow find an artist that's been doing it for a long time, whose works you admire, whose works you aspire to, take some one-on-one instruction from them. That would be really helpful. Also, look through reference material of artists that you admire in the past. And I know that seems like it's a given, but I kind of shut myself off from doing that for many years, because I had this weird fear that if I studied other artists' works too much, that they might influence me and my individual expression. But that's not, as long as you are not intending to do that, as long as you know that you want to find your own expression, I think it's only helpful. And just experiment as much as possible, and don't get discouraged by what other people say.
Yeah, that's important. So besides painting, running the bookstore, curating a exhibit, what kind of things do you do here in your spare time for fun?
John Paul and I are pretty bad homebodies, I'll have to admit.
Well, I'll join you in that.
It's so nice to just sit out on the porch and take in the view and the quietude. We do try to make it out to community events as much as possible to be supportive, especially anytime it's a literary event. So we'll find ourselves, over at the Beatnik or the college or wherever. And I love going hiking, of course, although I have that guilty thing where, why don't I do it more often? It's just right up the street.
Right, exactly. I find myself going up more at night. I will maybe either go out and get some food, or I'll pack something here and get in the car, and it's 7, 8 o'clock at night.
That sounds
I'll
lovely.
drive up there then and just kind of hang out. Or when we've had some of these big moons that have been coming and stuff, I'll go and find I have a spot now. I've done it enough times that I go up and I find my spot, and I just lift the gate in the back of my car, and I set up my pillows and blankets and just kind of hang out. And
I should do that.
it's great. And it's so quiet. I mean, you do get some cars coming by, but at night the traffic is so much less than going in there during the day.
What about coyotes?
I haven't seen any yet.
Really?
Mm-mm, not in there. Coming out, like when I'm driving out, I've seen the lights or owls. Those are amazing to see
Seen a
those
few
at
owls
night.
out here.
Oh my goodness.
They're so beautiful.
Yeah, so that's when I go to the park. I'm so glad that you came to talk with me today.
Likewise.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm looking forward to coming to the exhibit. I love stop motion, so I'm
great.
excited to come and see what that looks like.
I don't think you'll be disappointed.
I'm sure I won't. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for listening to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast. I want you to know how much I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you heard something that inspired or enlightened you, I'd love to hear about it. Send an email to desertladydiaries@gmail.com or start a discussion with other listeners at the Desert Lady Diaries Facebook page. I hope you'll join me next week when I talk with Rohini Walker. She's one of the editors of Luna Arcana magazine, which is chock full of desert fact, fiction, photography, and artwork. You'll also hear the reaction of her family and friends when she and her husband Martin announced they were moving to the desert from London. Thanks so much for listening.